Thanks, Rahesha, for that. That was Afghanistan. Let's move to Tianjin. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization on Monday strongly condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, including the April 22nd Pahalgam attack. The Tianjin Declaration, signed and adopted by all 10 members, called for an end to cross-border movement of terrorists. Member countries, including China and Turkey, expressed deepest sympathy and condolences to the families of the victims and stressed that the perpetrators, organizers and sponsors of such acts must be brought to justice. 26 people were killed on April 22nd after armed terrorists opened fire to tourists in Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam. Earlier, addressing the summit, the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, had called upon member countries to take firm and decisive action to fight terrorism in all its manifestation. Without naming any country, he emphasized that there should be no double standards in dealing with terrorism.
हमें स्पष्ट रूप से और एक स्वर में कहना होगा कि आतंकवाद पर कोई भी डबल स्टैंडर्ड स्वीकार्य नहीं होंगे.
The Prime Minister also highlighted India's approach to strengthening cooperation under the SCO framework. He noted that India seeks greater action under 3 pillars: security, connectivity and opportunity.
SCO को लेकर भारत की सोच और नीति 3 मुख्य स्तंभों पर आधारित है. SCO, S security, C connectivity, O opportunity.
Presidents Xi and Vladimir Putin took turns to swipe at the West during the gathering. Russian President Putin said the world needed a system that would replace outdated Eurocentric and Euro-Atlantic models and take into account the interests of the wider circle of countries. Putin also sought to defend his Ukraine offensive, blaming the West for triggering the war.
This crisis wasn't triggered by Russia's attack on Ukraine, but was a result of a coup in Ukraine, which was supported and provoked by the West.
That is a reference to Ukraine's 2013-2014 pro-European revolution, which ousted a pro-Russian president. He also added that the second reason for this crisis is the West's constant attempts to drag Ukraine into NATO. In a speech, Chinese leader Xi Jinping slammed the bullying behavior from certain countries, a veiled reference to the US. Xi told the SCO leaders that the global international situation was becoming more chaotic and intertwined.
Fourth, adhere to fairness and justice, promote the correct view of World War II history, and oppose Cold War mentality, camp confrontation, and bullying behavior.
Earlier, in his bilateral with Prime Minister Modi, President Xi said that China and India are cooperation partners, not rivals, and that the two countries are each other's development opportunities rather than threats.
It should be the right choice for China and India to be good neighborly friends and partners that help each other succeed and have the dragon and the elephant dance together.
Indian Prime Minister Modi also agreed that India and China are partners and that consensus far outweighs disagreement. He added that India is ready to view and develop the bilateral ties with China from a long-term perspective. Ms. Jane Kinnin-Moore is the CEO of the United Nations Association UK. She's now joining us live from London. Ms. Kinnin-Moore, good to see you and thank you very much for making time for us. What, in your view, is the biggest takeaway of this SCO summit? Because one of the standing issues is countering terrorism, and there's a declaration that was signed at the SCO. What do you make of the declaration?
I think this declaration on countering terrorism is a relatively routine thing to take place. It's something that all countries can agree on in principle. The issues tend to come when you start talking about exactly which groups are terrorists and who is responsible for backing them. That's where the blame game comes in. But for me, a lot of the takeaway is about this display of togetherness. You know, these are countries that obviously have difficulties and disputes between them, but they are all coming together on a big scale to make a point that international cooperation and multilateralism is thriving in this non-Western context. And of course, that's particularly useful for Putin to show himself as a leader who isn't as isolated as the West would like him to be, but it's also, in a way, a challenge to the kind of Eurocentricity of international politics. And I'm happy to have the chance to speak to you about it today, because over here in the UK, I would say this summit is somewhat undercovered. People are a lot more preoccupied with what's going on close to home, and the main thing people will listen to here are the statements on Ukraine, but the agenda here is, of course, much broader.
Talking about the statements from Ukraine or about Ukraine, we heard from the Russian president, who said that actually accused the West of starting the war in Ukraine. What do you make of his statement? And also Xi Jinping saying that they cannot stand bullying from the West.
Well, on one hand, the statements from Putin aren't hugely surprising, because this is the kind of line that he has taken ever since the invasion, which is to basically say that Russia is not responsible and to blame NATO and Ukraine for somehow starting the war. And I think that's problematic in a lot of ways, but it is what the Russian official position has been for quite some time. However, it is interesting that he's leaning into this line right at the moment when, as we've discussed before, we've seen these high-level summits in the US and with Europeans in recent weeks trying to help bring about some kind of ceasefire, de-escalation, or even peace agreement. So to hear this repetition of the same old lines is a bit discouraging to anyone who is looking for a peace agreement, because this could have been an opportunity for other countries, including China, to say, we all want to support de-escalation and calming down the situation in Ukraine. At various points in the past, there has been talk about China possibly being some kind of guarantor for a future Ukraine peace agreement. And we know that China and India have also quietly helped to dissuade Putin from making nuclear threats towards Ukraine. So unfortunately, we're not hearing signals that these other leaders are doing what they could do to try to help stop this war. But we'll see what comes out in the end.
All right. Miss Jane Kinnan-Moore, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Good to see you. Thank you.